Yes, I happen to have three, I call them super gems,
Okay.
Rafaela, Jordan, and Solomon, and ranging from late 20s to 19 years old, and Solomon's a freshman at NYU Stern School of Business. So, starting off segment 2 of our one-on-one,
Yeah.
I want to ask you, Dr. Rubenstein, if you encountered a 40-year-old son of a Holocaust survivor, a 40, 50-year-old son. He said, "You, Dr. Rubenstein, my father suffered so much, and I'd like to have faith. What can you tell me?"
Well, there are a number of things you could tell him, and that is you can look at faith from the point of view of whether you think it's true or false, which is to turn it into a series of propositions which you can judge, or you can look at it from the point of view of Torah Tziva Lano Moshe Morashak Elah Yaakov. This is the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. And your father was killed because he was part of that inheritance. And you, the most constructive way in terms of your father that you can go on is to be sure that that remains your inheritance as well. And that the question of intellectual proposition is the least important aspect of the thing. It's a question of community, solidarity, continuity of learning. And when I see, or when I think of my relationship to my community here, it's my primary community. And when I was in Tallahassee, Florida, where I was for 25 years, I used to say of the congregation there that in Tallahassee, every Southern professor of religion must be a member of the church of his choice. And since there was only one congregation in Tallahassee, it was the church of my choice. But I don't feel that way about the congregation here. It's much more authentic. Authenticity means a great deal to me. That's one of the things I would say to the son of a Holocaust survivor. I would also tell him that if anyone, individual or group, threatens to destroy, exterminate, or harm Jews, believe that person. Don't say that, oh, well, they don't mean it, or well, maybe we can make them more moderate if they get me to know me better. They're telling the truth. And if I find one fault with too many members of the Jewish community, and also too many rabbis, is that they refuse to believe what they're being promised. What they're being promised is utter destruction. Now, I'm a member of the Rabbinical Assembly of America, the conservative rabbis group, although I haven't practiced. 1970 is when I had my last relationship as a leader of a congregation. It's 43 years. I'm still a member, but I'm appalled by the way in which rabbis make excuses and try to say that they don't mean what they mean. And I'll tell you something else. As president of my university, I was willing to hire Muslim professors who I believe were qualified for their work and would not create a problem. At the same time, I will not ever take part in a Muslim, Jewish, Christian dialogue. And the reason is very simple. A fundamental tenet of Islam is that not only did the Jews and Christians get their interpretation of Scripture wrong, they falsified their Scripture, because the real authentic Scripture is the Koran, which we know wasn't written until at least 700 years after most of the Bible was completed. And I'm not going to deal with people whose fundamental idea is that Jews and Christians falsify their Scripture.
So let me tie the two pieces of this recent part of this conversation together. I want to focus on the theme that keeps coming up, the word authenticity, where you said that you would articulate to the son of the Holocaust survivor the authenticity of your faith, the authenticity of Judaism.
Right.
And if this 40-year-old said to you, Dr. Rubenstein, could you please expand on that theme, on the authenticity of Judaism?
I was shaped and formed by my parents, my grandparents, going back thousands of years. And I am the result of their experiences and their wisdom. Now, in case of my father and mother, they were not religious Jews at all. My mother, who was a university graduate in 1920, fed us ham and bacon at home because she wanted to make sure we didn't have Jewish neuroses. That was a kind of fat pseudo-Freudianism. But there is a whole accumulation of wisdom and inheritance that I simply will not turn my back on. It's fundamental responsibility, especially since efforts have been made to destroy it in the Holocaust. And I am convinced that if the Muslims ever succeeded in destroying Israel, sotto voce, under their breath, most of the European leaders would say, problem solved.
And does Sinai ground the authenticity of Judaism? And to what extent does it ground the authenticity of Judaism? And how do you view Sinai?
Well, Sinai as a metaphor is obviously crucial, but you have to understand that for me, I view the Bible historically and critically. So how do I see Sinai? Let me give you an example. You know, I'm critical of the whole idea of the covenant between God and Israel. See, on the one hand, this is what really got me into the whole question of God and the Holocaust, because, as you probably know, I was in Berlin in 1961 at the time that the wall just went up, and I was talking to this German clergyman who was not a Nazi, but who had his own Protestant version of what happened in ancient times. And he said, started out by saying...
God was responsible for every aspect of it, right? I believe you wrote that the clergyman said God was responsible for the good and responsible for the bad.
He said that because his church was in East Berlin, he couldn't get to it, he was in West Berlin. He said, God is punishing us for what we did. But then he started to go on. He said, God punished the Jews at Auschwitz for their sins. To which I answered, I'd rather be an atheist than believe in such a God.
Right.
And then he said to me, how can you say that and still be a rabbi? And I said, I need one thing more than God to be a rabbi. He said, what's that? A few live Jews. And by your logic, I would have none. Okay, so that's the issue of the covenant. Covenant, you have it. I, the Lord your God, am a zealous God. All right. The Ten Commandments are a covenant doctrine. I don't want to go into the whole issue of the history of covenant, but it was basically a sovereignty treaty. Sovereignty treaty in which the superior suzerain, knowing that the kinglets under him, since gods were ancestral gods in those days, did not have the same gods, he got them to swear on their gods, if I am not loyal to you, may my God punish me. And that's the essence of the thing. Now, basically, what the Ten Commandments allowed, what Sinai allowed, was people of different backgrounds to be united under one God. For example, the Bible speaks of the Erev, that there was a mixed multitude. If you stop to think of who was present in the slave camps of Egypt, whoever they could collect, and then Moses takes them out. They don't all have the same gods because they don't have the same ancestors. So, how is Moses going to find a way to put them into one cohesive group? Because if they're not one cohesive group, they'll go into Sinai and they'll be slaughtered. I am the Lord thy God who has taken thee out of the land of Egypt. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That says the whole thing. I have manifested myself in history. You may come from different backgrounds, different gods, but the one experience you've had in common is Yetziat Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt, and then there is the absolute condition, you will have no other gods before me. And it's at that point that Israelite monotheism, and that makes a great deal of sense to me.
So, would it be fair to say there's a heavy element of civilization, of national group in the mix?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Memories.
Right. With your permission,
Sure.
I would view Sinai as that, I don't think you disagree with me, as an attempt to reach for the metaphysical heights in its own way, through the prism of somehow cumulative consciousness. And the best stab at that point, at reaching it, through mitzvah, through Torah mitzvah, and through the same Ten Commandments. And I suspect it has been the noblest and greatest endeavor to that effect of all time, from my perspective.
Here is, I tend to look at the text of the Bible historically and sociologically. And for me, when I read the verses of Sinai, I am the Lord thy God who has taken thee out of the land of Egypt, thou shalt have no other gods before me. What's the social context? Why did this work? Why was it revolutionary? Incidentally, it worked for Christians, it worked for Muslims. Because in each case, you were able to unite disparate peoples with disparate gods under a single God. See?
Fair enough.
See? And so you might say that one way of looking at this is from your way, from the point of view of this representing the highest possible expression of reality. On the other hand, when I tend to see this thing in terms of the fact that it enabled the unification of people who otherwise would not have been unified at a time when they needed the unification.
Fair enough. As a parting question for this one-on-one.
Sure.
I pivot my metaphysics on the concept of potential.
Okay.
That each one of us is a potential. That we are a continuum of the God of potential. Can you share just some thoughts about that, some feelings about how that resonates with you?
Well, obviously, when I read your comments about I shall be what I shall be, most theologians and biblical historians don't know what to do with those verses. And I think what you did was to show that they're fairly central, and I think I said amen to what you had to say, so that it worked. And
fair enough.
That's all I can say right now.
Fair enough.
But it definitely did work.
I just want to say it's been a fascinating, energizing one-on-one with you. Mm-hmm. You're a very formidable individual in person.
Oh, I'm just...
And très formidable, and I look forward to the possibility of continuing our academic and personal relationship.
Fine.
Okay, all the best to you.
Oh, yeah.